Beautiful, beautiful. All right, let's rock and roll, man. Good to see everybody. Super fired up for today's call. This is the Coaching Matters Group Coaching Program, and I first want to just welcome everybody to the Coaching Matters Group Coaching Program and podcast sponsored by Fundraising University. We'd like to take the time to say thank you to any current Fundraising University coaches, coaches and administrators joining us on the call today. As you know, Fundraising University is the top high school fundraising company in the United States, helping raise over $150 million for programs since its inception in 2009. Now, at the end of June 2022, we're nearing the end of season one. Season two begins in July 2022. So as we near the end of season one in our Coaching Matters group coaching program, I just wanted to let you know that we've thoroughly enjoyed our time together over the past year, and we've got two more calls here coming up in June. And as we transition into season two, here's the key. Our Coaching Matters calls will be reserved for Fundraising University customers, Coaching Matters ambassadors, and Fundraising University employees and franchise owners. So this particular group of people will be invited to participate in one Coaching Matters call per month as we move into season two, and one power hour of mental performance training where I train you on the mindset of being an entrepreneur and the systems and strategies that you need to succeed as an entrepreneur and business owner. So we'll have one Coaching Matters call and we'll have one mental performance training call. These calls are going to focus on personal development as well as development in your coaching role. So if you're not currently a Fundraising University customer, Coaching Matters ambassador, Fundraising University employee, or franchise owner, please go to the link that I'm about to post inside of our chat here. It's coachingmatters.org, and you click on Join the Mission to apply. And a member of our Fundraising University team will be in contact with you within 24 hours of submission. So I posted that link inside of our chat, and super excited for tonight's group coaching call with Jeremy Carey. We're going to discuss leading yourself first so you can grow as fast as your business. Now, Jeremy is a good friend of mine. He's the CEO of the Ironclad Media Alliance out of Virginia Beach. They've done commercials for Garmin, done commercials for Under Armour, a lot of programs with the Navy SEAL Foundation. They produce Mental Performance Daily, my podcast, and super humbled to have Jeremy, the CEO, come and share some of his wisdom and some of his strategies that you can use to lead yourself first so that your business can grow as fast as you. So Jeremy, super excited to have you join us here on the Coaching Matters group call, man. Thanks for making time to join us, brother.
Hey, man, so excited. I appreciate it. You've made such an impact on my life. I know that everybody on this can probably agree with me on that, and just fired up to be here with you and the team.
Yeah, man, we're super excited to have you. You know, I think you have a really cool role as a CEO of Ironclad, and that you get to be around high performers all the time. Whether we're talking about record-setting athletes, talking about billion-dollar CEOs, talking about Navy SEALs and behind the scenes, or with top performing corporate executives. And I think a great place to get started here is as a high performer and a hard charger and a business owner yourself, who also gets around some of the most elite of the elite. What are some of the things that you do that you feel like make you your best, that you feel like would be beneficial for any business owner to do that maybe they're not aware of? Things like an MVP or a routine or kind of your day-to-day process. What are some of those things that you do that you feel like help you unlock that entrepreneur mindset to be a guy going from selling t-shirts out of a van to running one of the biggest media conglomerates on the planet?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think, there's a lot of things that tools that I use, and I'll get into that, and because I think one of the big takeaways that I have from working with you is optimizing on those tools and ultimately my capacity because of those tools. But the real question that even I would want to get into before that is the why, right? Why be a hard charger? Why push yourself? Why push your team? And it's really about making an impact, right? So for me, I'm very, very passionate about what I do. And passion turns into career oftentimes, if you're lucky. But putting the pieces together to say, okay, I have this passion and momentum. Now what can I do? Can I give it away? Giving has really been something that has motivated me to refine my habits and my processes and my tools. Um, and if you can attach a purpose to your passion, you're going to be able to increase all those things. And then you're going to want to be able to put more of these tools in place. Um, so I've been fortunate to find that. Many people I know haven't found that yet, and some people have never find it. So I've been fortunate to find that. But to come back to the tools is what it really comes down to is MVP, understanding your mission, your values, your principles. I'm not going to lie. When we first started together, some of it I was like, yeah, you said something to me. You said, hey, listen, I'm going to give you some of these tools and processes, but I don't want you to fill this extra time with more work. And I remember thinking like, yeah, all right, I'm going to. But what I realized is that clarity that I come with some of these automations and optimizations, I'm able to take my impact and force multiply far, far greater than I could otherwise. But I never, put a mission to anything. I just went on sheer passion, and that can only take you but so far.
So I want to unpack this idea of passion and systems. And also, the idea that you brought up about giving. And one of the things I think that's so cool with Ironclad is, as working with you pre-pandemic, during pandemic, post-pandemic, was how you guys pivoted and used adversity as your advantage. And you started your own, content network during the pandemic. And if everybody opens up the link inside of the Google or inside of the chat here in Zoom, I just posted a link to one of the programs that Ironclad does in Jeremy's episode in a thing called 1 Week Challenge. And their 1 week challenge is an idea where they've had Joe DeSena, the CEO of Spartan Races. They've had, Matt Frazier, who is the #1 CrossFit athlete in the world. He's like the Babe Ruth of CrossFit, right? And they've had some great guests on here to talk about just 1 week challenges to help you to be your best. So Jeremy, your 1 week challenge was to take $100, 5 $20 bills, and give one to somebody every day. First, unpack this idea behind giving, and then also the 1 week challenge. So let's start with the idea behind giving. Why is giving so important for somebody? And is there a certain point where you'd say like you should start giving when you make X number of dollars a year, or is it something you should start to develop that habit early?
Yeah, so I think giving is first off, it's I think it's the one thing that we all can do and should do. I think that I'm big. Spiritually, my faith is a big thing for me that drives me for a lot of things. And there's a verse that says, "To much is given, much is required," and we're all given a lot, right? We live in a time where things are very abundant for all of us, and even if we don't make anything, we might have time. If you don't have time, you might have money. If you don't have that, you might have a skill set, you might have a kind word. So giving is a very easy thing in theory to do. It's hard in practice. You have to focus and consciously do those things. So I think it's a very important thing. I think it's required of us to give. Now, I think that the practice of it is something that we have to refine, right? And when you say like, what is that threshold and how much do you need to make in order to give? I think if you don't make anything, most likely you have time, and you can give your time, you can give your word, you can give your skill set, your services, anything. And you have to your point, lead yourself before you can lead. You can't give until you can't give anymore. But in practice, the $100 a week challenge that we gave was because it's challenging. You flex a little bit. $100 is still $100, right? You have to go out of your way to find someone. You have to get beyond your judgments on why this person deserves your $20 or whatever it may be. And, it'll give you a little bit of extra pep in your step that you help someone, but it's a good practice to get into. That was a very practical example that we gave on 1 week challenge. But even the reason why we have 1 week challenge is because it's a 3 to 5 minute show, and we hear from the heaviest hitters in the world that are giving insights and giving challenges to our audience that impact their lives. So, the force multiplication of giving is um, it's immeasurable, really.
Mm. Yeah, I think I love about the 1 week challenge, right? Is not only the guests that you have on there that are amazing, but also just the simplicity of the challenge. Whether it was the Navy SEAL who talked about taking a 1 minute cold shower every day, or Ashley who talked about doing a 5K run every day, or your concept of give away $20 every day, or Joe DeSena's, which I've started taking and gave it for a month challenge. That's typical Joe, right? Of start eating only between 9 and 5, and having a strict. Matt Frazier, the CrossFit World Champion, who said have a strict go to bed wake up time. So the cool part about 1 week challenge is the guests that you have, who are some of the most high performing people in the world, can decide what challenge they want to give. And the cool part about the challenges that they give, as I've been following the show, is a lot of those tie right back into what could go into an MVP process. And you mentioned MVP process earlier. Unpack kind of, because how you use that, because for a lot of our Fundraising University reps, they have an MVP process. But for some of the people on the call, Jackson Mitchell, for example, who's here, was a football player at SMU, is now a business owner, an entrepreneur. We had an MVP process with SMU football, but does he have one in his own personal life? How do you use your own personal MVP, and would you share kind of that process for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, how do I use my MVP is, once again, I kind of, from a guy who's just been kind of self-motivated and driven on passion, it was never something that I felt like, well, that takes the organic nature out of my passion or whatever justifications I wanted to make. So until I actually practiced it is when I realized that it really correlates with everything, right? It allows you to paint a roadmap, not only of what you stand for with your mission, values, and principles, which, by the way, if you haven't analyzed those, you'll realize that they evolve, right? And that you're almost without direction if you don't have a mission to fall back on or values that you really fall back on. You might assume you have them, but when really challenged, you'll wonder, do I have those? How do I pass that to my children, my wife, my kids, my team who's following me? So one thing, I was almost convicted to the fact that, wow, I've been going this long based on raw emotion that may or may not be something that I can actually tangibly give. I can articulate my mission and my values to folks. So that's one thing. And then the quarterly goals are very important, because what gets measured gets done, right? And if you are putting them into your MVP, it's something that you can tangibly assess. It's something that you can communicate to others. And ultimately, I'm here to make impact through inspiration, right? I want my team, I want my kids, I want everyone to look at my fruit that I'm bearing and be inspired by that. I don't want them to say, man, I wish I was him. I wish I was this. I want to say, I wish I could produce like him, produce fruit like him, and make impact like him. I want to think about that in every aspect. I don't want this envious thing. I don't want this this thing where people are looking for the material things that come with this sometimes. But I want to inspire them to go harder and go more and to continue to give of themselves. So, the MVP process is super important in that, because you can paint that picture, you can charge towards them, and then you can audit. Like, a part of me, like I said, my faith is a big part of my life. And I audited what I was doing for quarter over quarter, and I wasn't even putting my faith in it. I was chasing business things. I was chasing material things. I was chasing buying these properties and doing different things, which, by the way, I did do those things because I had a roadmap to get them. But when I stepped back and, like I said, whoa, if I say that that's the cornerstone of my life, I can now look at this thing and say, I'm not even writing this in. And it was a wake up call for me. So it's so important that you can see your journey, that you can audit it, but ultimately that you can set a bar and hard charge towards that, and then share that with others.
Yeah, and then some of the things that you said throughout there were, when you have this MVP process. I know we've got some coaches on here that it's we've got one of the top officials in NBA history who's on the call here, which is exciting. And first time seeing you here, so thanks for joining. And, you know, if you don't have an MVP process and don't know what that is, if you go into our chat and you see, I just posted a link that says MVP process template you can use, right? So here's an example of what Jeremy's talking about. So if you go to this template here, this is an example, right? That has your mission, has the vision, has your quarterly goals for energy, for work, and for love, and then your definition of success, your one word, and your core principles, right? So if you click File, Make a Copy, you can then edit this MVP process to be for you, right? There's an editable one on the bottom, but you can take this and use this as an example. So Jeremy, when we go through this, right, we're gonna get to where we talk about how do I measure this in my day-to-day process and habit share, but it gives you that clarity, it gives you that direction, and gives you that focus. And you said that with your MVP process, let's go through this. Like, how long did it take you to come up with what your mission was, and what is your mission?
Yeah, it's to learn, live, and give, inspire others to live a life of impact. And how long did that take me? It took me 2 or 3 quarters to really refine, and not only to refine, but also to activate on. Right. I think that even out of the gate, this is very daunting of a task. It's daunting for a couple reasons. It's like when you first start doing your budget every week, or start doing, I don't want to look, I just, it's easier to just keep moving, right? And when you first look at this, if you don't have one as an example, Brian, what I appreciate about you and your teaching is that you always share yours. One, it's good transparency. It inspires other people to step it up when they see with what you're doing. And then two, and then finally, it gives you an example here, because it is daunting out of the gate. And having this as an example is where I started. I kind of used yours. I kind of refined, oh, how can I get an angle at this? And as time went on, I added different categories and line items and things that are in my life. At the time, you didn't have a kid. I did. All types of things that I added into this that have ultimately been a way that I can steer the ship over the coming months.
Yeah, it's excellent. So you know, you look at the mission, you look at the life vision, the things you want to accomplish in your life, like the resume, and then you go into the quarterly, and 3 main areas in the quarterly: the energy, the work, and the love. Jeremy, what are some of the categories, right? So if the 3 main categories are energy, work, and love, and we call these, let's say, subcategories, what would be the subcategories that you focus on for energy, and some of those behaviors that you do consistently to build that relentless energy?
Yeah, they really aren't far from yours, right? Like, on the energy side, it is about my nutrition. It's about my daily habits that are my physical energy. Literally, my daily habits for my AM and PM routines, my sleep, my workout routines, my nutrition. That's really is where I hone in on, much like yours. I can't tell you how much it's been a part of it. Once again, when we break down the daily tracking on this, habit share, this is one of the biggest impacts that I've had through tangible, not only something that someone can notice by staring at me, but by my performance. And if the physical, the nutrition, and the exercise, it is something that you can see. It's something that you can see, and that's a pro and con. It's a con because some of the spiritual stuff you don't see, and it weighs on you, and you can't activate as much until sometimes it's late. Mental and spiritual stuff. The physical stuff is an outward manifestation of what you're putting your efforts in. You can see it, you can feel it. And ultimately the people around you can see it and feel it. So if you want to inspire them, it's an easy place to start.
Yeah. So when you talk about energy, one of the things you mentioned, and we've talked a lot about this, and it's funny, as we bring season 1 of Coaching Matters to a close this month, as I reflect back and go through right now, what I do is after each call, I post the podcasts, and then I look and say, okay, what do I feel like were like the 3 to 5 main themes that were said? And then I go looking for, like, success leaves clues. Is there anything that every guest that we've had talks about, right? And almost to a T, every guest that we have had has mentioned either an AM or a PM routine. And if we think about the AM PM routine, those are going to fit within your energy category for your MVP process. So Jeremy, unpack if you would sort of the PM, because that's the Kickstarter of the AM, right? Most people get it wrong and they focus too much on the AM and let go of the PM. And I know last night I'm watching college baseball till 10:30, 11 o'clock at night because one of my teams, Texas State, is playing late, and TCU and Texas A&M are playing late. And now my AM routine gets thrown off this morning. I'm not as sharp as I want to be. I didn't go to bed at my 8:30, 9 o'clock typical time. I was up till 11, which may not be late to some, but it's like 3 hours later for me, right? So what are some of those key things in your AM PM that you're executing on that you feel like really move the needle for energy?
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point there, I want to say this to everyone watching, like when you hear 8:30 to Brian, it's like, whoa, man, yeah, that is early. But I'm a night owl, and my PM routine is very important to me because if I don't activate my PM, to your point, my AM is off. And if my AM is off, then I'm not as optimized as I could be, right? My lights out time is around 11:30. But my PM routine starts with laying my clothes out for the next day. I don't, for me, it's a black t-shirt and jeans every day, but I mean, everything from my socks to my shoes, everything is laid out. It's one less thing for me to deal with in the morning. So it starts there. I then do the bathroom routine, brush your teeth, do all those things. I take my supplements before bed, all my vitamins. I got my PM vitamins that I take, drink them, drink down the water. I go into the bed, and then I audit my day. So I go on Habit Share, and I audit everything. Did I do this, do that? And I'm sure Brian will talk about that. But we go into Habit Share, and I audit everything for the day. And it's basically in alignment with my MVP. That way I'm brain dumping anything that's on my mind. Oh man, after I audit the checkpoints, I brain dump anything for the next day. It's out. Then I go into my reading. So for me, my reading is the Daily Stoic, which is one, Brian, that you got me introduced into, and then the Bible. I do a passage out of both, and then I've audited my day. I've prepared for tomorrow by brain dumping whatever I had. I do my reading to settle my brain, and I can go lights out. And that's mine, right? Some people don't do screens at night. I do. But that's my routine, but I follow it like clockwork. I might miss it if there's to your point, like a fight or something, and I'm up really late and I just crash, but it's very, very rare.
And the days that you do miss it, like let's say you're out in Park City, Utah, doing some Navy SEAL Foundation shoot, and you're working 4 straight 20-hour days, and you do miss it. What do you notice about when you miss it?
It's a chain reaction, right? And then it falls into everything. So if I miss my PM routine, the likelihood of me hitting my AM routine is a little bit off, right? And it could be, it's not even that hard of a routine. I mean, it's very simple, and it's the same with my AM routine. And then I might be scrambling a little bit the next day, and then I'm not focusing on the things that I had to do, or the things that I'm focusing on. My mental bandwidth is a little bit off, and then something else might slip. It might be my workout, because now I'm scrambling, and then now my workout, and then it progressively gets into a spiral for me. Routine is very important in that manner, but they're also the good thing. The pro about it is it's very easy to get back on because I have it tracked. I have the times built in. I have those things, but the optimization that I have because of those things, it just sets me on the right path. And I know a lot of people might be deterred from those routines because they seem like a lot of work. They don't have to be a lot of work. Brian, you did help me with even the clothes layout things. Like you're like, tell me what you're doing every day. And I'm like, this is what I'm doing. You're like, well, why don't you just put them out before? I was like, I don't know. Why would I do that? But that little thing was a big deal. So like, you don't have to have some insane routine. When you get to see what some of these guys are doing, super high performers, you're like, dude, that routine is crazy out of the gate. Start simple with it, and you'll see how far it goes. One other thing before we go into this is like, everyone on this, I'm sure you're on these for different reasons. The fact is that you're absorbing content from people that Brian is bringing to you on a weekly basis. That's huge. First off, content, I'm in the content business. I know the stats. Content is the number one addiction, hands down, out of everything we do. And the fact is that you're taking in good content now. That is your supplement. That is your vitamins. the fact that you're doing that is a big deal because, like I said before, when your nutrition's off, your diet's off, your workouts are off, you can see it, you can feel it. The stuff that we're putting in our heads is like Twinkies every day, all day. You don't see that until it gets a little late. So, first off, it's huge there so that you're absorbing these things. This is the first step into really getting that inspiration to change. When you get that inspiration, you get addicted to the results, and the results are crazy. And like I said, if you just take one step to get to those next results, it's insane. And that's, if Brian, if I can rabbit trail a little, I want to
Let's
even
go.
talk
Yeah,
about
come on, man. Let's go.
journey for me is like I got inspired by people I was around, because I direct these commercials and get to work with different people. I get to see these super high performers, whether it's in athletics or business or the military or any of these other things. And I was inspired by the fruit that they were putting out. And I started noticing what are those things that make them different. And I started seeing the discipline, the routines, the vision, the dedication to achieving that vision, the optimization of their day. And I realized the only thing that's stopping me from getting that is myself. The only thing that's stopping me from getting to those things, whether it's the performance in the body, the mind, the soul, any of those things. So I started doing more research on what they do. And I heard George St. Pierre said he didn't really get his edge until he started working with Brian Cain. And I said, okay, who's this Brian Cain guy? I literally Googled Brian and I emailed him. And he said, hey, dude, yeah, we can start working together. We started working together. I started implementing these practices. And then I became an inspiration to people that once inspired me. And you can see that like you start surpassing and starting to be able to bring other people up as you get these compounding results. And the fact is that we live in a day and age, just like you guys are on this call right here. If you had to get a hold of the rock tomorrow because your life depended on it, you could. That's the time we live in right now. You can actually access anyone or anybody you want. You can be doing business with, you can be leading with, you can be friends with anybody you want. And it starts with being able to build yourself into being an asset and inspiring others. And then you will be able to give to those people. If you are able to give to those people and be an asset to them, then you can be on the same plane. And that's really how it works. And seriously, anyone on this call, if you set a goal to be in alignment with someone, you can. And then you would be surprised how fast that you will be inspiring them and you will be leading them and they will be calling on you to be an asset to them. It's really wild. And Brian, I attribute a lot of these principles that you've given me to help get there.
It's really good, man. It's really good. Really, so much to unpack here. One of the things that you have on your habit share, right? So if we talk about habit share now, for everybody on the, they can make these cameras that are really high def, but they can't go more than 25 minutes without turning off and turning back on. Good, But if you use the app Habit Share, and if you're not yet using it, I cannot reinforce to you enough. And I said this on a call today with a group. I said, the number one thing that I've learned in 20 years of doing mental performance work and being obsessed with this to move the needle is Habit Share. And what I mean by it's not the app Habit Share, it's the concept of measurement and accountability and knowing, am I doing what I want to do and living in alignment? And Jeremy, you hit the nail on the head, man, when you said my habit share, my success checklist, right? What I said I'm going to do, and then I run an audit on my day on whether I did it or not. And after I run that audit, I make a decision to either course correct the next day or continue down the path of success. But if I'm not living in alignment with what I want to do, I got to make a decision. Either change the direction I want to go and go south and don't go towards the big goals I have, or change the behavior. And if you're not willing to change your big goals, then you're going to have to change your behavior to be in alignment with those big goals. But you don't know unless you measure. Would you talk, Jeremy, about the importance of measurement in that audit at the end of your day that you run in Habit Share to make sure you're living in alignment with who you want to be?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think that accountability, we all have different type of appetite for that, right? And I'm lucky that I'm just wired that I crave that, right? I crave kind of critical, criticism or crave someone giving me straight answers on where can I improve? What did I do right? What did I do wrong? Well, I even like it more when I can see my own stuff, like, and it's simple. It's this. So it can, I understand that everyone's wired a little different, and you can get a little bit like, get discouraged by those things. But one thing, Brian, that you told me was like, just keep marking it red, keep marking it red. It's okay. Just keep marking it red. And eventually you'll get tired of seeing it red. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I still am marking things red, but I see it and I know what I want to focus on, or is that really of value to me? Right. Because if I'm not doing it, maybe it's not of value to me. And maybe I thought it was, or it was a good idea in practice, but I can't tell you how important it is to measure those things, right? We measure everything else. We measure our budgets. We measure any of these other things in life, but we're not necessarily measuring the things that we want to accomplish or get done. And even when I go into that impact or that inspiration or those relationships, it's even that measuring that. For me, I measure even like, did I exercise with my kids? Did I text a world changer? One of my things is texting a world changer because I want to continue to invest in relationships, and impact, and especially in relationships of people that are making an impact, and all of those things you can measure. And if you're striking out every time, you're gonna eventually get sick of seeing red. You're either going to activate, or you're going to say, this thing isn't that valuable to me. I'm going to move on from it. So it's been really important to me.
Yeah, because by checking the box red, meaning I didn't do it, or checking it green, I did do it, you're building awareness. And awareness is the first step to growth. And if we backtrack a little bit here, Jeremy, a couple of things that you said. Surrounding yourself with other hard chargers or people that are on the same path as you. And when I used to hear that, right, they'd say, hey, you become the average of the 5 people you hang out with most. And I'm going, I'm a high school athletic director in Newport, Vermont. I hang out with our administrative assistant. I hang out with high school kids. I hang out with our assistant principal, who's also the football coach. But that's my life. I don't really leave, and I'm not going anywhere. And then the idea popped in March of 2006 when I heard Dr. Rob Gilbert, and he spoke at a seminar, and he talked about Success Hotline, and he said, you become the average of the 5 people you hang out with most, and you don't have to be with them in person. And it was like a light switch went off for me. And I said, well, wait a minute. I can call Success Hotline every day. I've met Dr. Rob Gilbert in person 3 times in my life. 3 times for like 2 hours each. And the guy's had as much impact on me as anybody, right? Because I listen to his voice every day with Success Hotline, which is now a part of the Ironclad Content Network podcast. So when you're saying, surround yourself with people, that doesn't have to be in person. That can be through audio, through podcasts, through book, through study, correct?
Correct. And the thing is, it's like, it's not inauthentic to push yourself to reach out to people, or push yourself to communicate with someone, right? So everyone on this call, right? If you're not on your cell phone, you should look on your cell phone right now and look at the past 5 people you texted with. You should just look, who are the past 5 people I texted with? And if at least one of them is not someone that you aspire to be like, or to learn from, or pushes you, you should then text someone who does. I don't care if you just said, hey man, you're crushing it, keep going. Even if you said that to someone, you're not asking for anything for them, but you're pushing yourself to invest in those relationships. And it's very important. I can't tell you how many things have become, Brian and I, are the same way. I've met you, Brian, once in person, dude.
Yeah.
We've known each other for 3 years.
Yeah.
And we're friends, and we're business partners on a podcast.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that is the case for so many of the people that I work with. But it was a conscious effort to invest in the relationships. That's the biggest thing. It is not inauthentic to consciously invest in a relationship. You have to audit yourself and push yourself to do those things. But it is what it takes. I consciously audit my relationship with God because it's important to me. I consciously audit my relationship with my kids because it's important to me. If you are doing that as you invest in other people, you're not asking anything of them. You can literally just reach out to them to say, you're doing awesome. You've inspired me. Keep going. That means a lot to them, and it gets you a rep in, and you get some face time with someone you admire. And those are the practices that it takes to take it to another level with those relationships. And I can't tell you how many, one of the things was, Brian, because we talked about this many years or a few years ago about the 5 people. And then I started auditing, and that's when I said, I'm going to text a world changer a week.
Yeah.
But I can give you a couple practical examples where this has been, I mean, one of my things was in my MVP was to hire a creative director because I was getting bogged down with creative and things were only going but so far. I wanted to build the business, stop being in the business and being in the rat race. And I knew one of the keys to that was get a creative director. That was in my MVP, right? But also in my MVP was to establish more impactful relationships with people that are making an impact in the world. Well, part of my challenge to myself was weekly, I'm going to text a world changer. So one of the world changers I texted was the creative director at Under Armour, because I admired him, and we worked for him for many years. We did the Michael Phelps campaign together. We did a bunch of Cameron Haynes campaign together, did a bunch together. And he was a world changer that I wanted to text. So I texted him and said, hey dude, I hope you're well. Everything that you have been doing is awesome. Keep crushing. It was something simple. It wasn't anything. And he said, dude, I've been meaning to reach out to you. Hit me up sometime. I hit him up. We started talking. The next week, he's the global creative director of Ironclad. But 2 things, a lot. If you have these vision marks that you're seeing, you'll be surprised with how many times you can quickly optimize on opportunities. But if they're not written, you miss them. You don't realize they're there. So it wasn't something that I was going out to, maybe he's the guy. I wasn't even thinking about that. But it just is crazy how those work out. And I can talk about many, many more examples that are like that. But if you're not out there consciously auditing these things and activating on these things, it's much harder for these things to just happen.
Yeah, if you don't ask, the answer is always no. And it's interesting, Jeremy, there's a lot of people on here that work in sales. And if you just think about that text message that you sent to the guy who's the creative at Under Armour, and a week later he's working for Ironclad. And if you don't ask, the answer is always no. And when you got started, right? When you got started, rewind the clock, you were an element of sales. There's an element of sales of you selling that your brand is better than the other brand that wants to go do the series that's going to be on Netflix, right? So when you're in sales, continuing to communicate and reach out and connect with people, I think that's one strategy that should be on everyone who's in sales, should be on your habit share, which is to text a prospective client and just connect. Even if it's just, hey, congrats on the win, or even texting somebody, hey, congrats on winning a state championship, been a fan from afar. You never know.
And it means a lot. And you're exercising the giving. That's giving. You're giving kind words. And that is an important giving tool. And it's someone that someone wants around. And it's a good exercise to be in regardless. It's very authentic and it's real. And you have to, that is the biggest thing. It's like, if you're able to give to a relationship, it generally is the better relationships, and if you want to increase those relationships, the more you give, the more you get. And you don't do it with that in mind, but the more relationships you get, right? And it's look, when you are at a plane, let's talk directing or filmmaking or whatever it is in my world. It's like, okay, there's a lot of really good filmmakers. I mean, a lot. So it's like and if you're in sales and your brand is selling something, or if you're in athletics, it's like, okay, there's a lot of the best in the world, right? Okay, if you're among the top 10, that's why you're at the table. You're already good, right? I get it. Now what? What else are you doing? I call them serrations on the blade, right? Like if it's all the world's sharpest blade, it can only get it so sharp, but how many serrations do you have? And if you're able to give, that's one more. If you're able to constantly be an asset to someone, it's not asking for things, giving, freely giving. And that's where you become, irreplaceable. I get one of our like Gerber and Blade HQ is one of our big sponsors, and I can get whatever blade I want. I want the one with this little serration so I can open boxes, or I can cut rope, or I can do whatever. I just want that one. That's the one. I don't want the one that's just a straight razor. I want one that can do any of it. And that's what it's like with a salesman, with a partner, with a friend, any of those things. And that's why, these practices are important.
We're here with Jeremy Carey. He's the CEO of Ironclad. I want to take a minute and open this up for questions. Anything related to anything that we've talked about tonight, from MVP process to habit share to routines to mindset to growing your business. Obviously, Jeremy's business is booming and going great. So maybe any business specific questions. We've got a lot of entrepreneurs on here as too, Jeremy. So maybe shifting some of our content into that mindset of an entrepreneur. And any questions for Jeremy, go ahead and post them inside of the chat. And while you're posting those questions, I just want to take a minute to once again thank Fundraising University and owner Mike Bahoon as the official sponsor for the Coaching Matters group coaching program. Fundraising University is looking to team up with members of our Coaching Matters community for 3 main roles. Role 1 is as a franchise owner to run fundraisers in your local territory. Role 2 is as a corporate rep to run Fundraising University fundraisers in your territory. And role 3 is as an ambassador coach, who you all could be, that has contacts with coaches or clubs looking to do fundraisers that might be able to help introduce Fundraising University and be the bridge from Fundraising University to those coaches. And through that, you were eligible to receive a percentage of the profit of the sale. So if you're interested in joining the team, please head to coachingmatters.org and click on join our mission. I posted that inside of the chat, and we'll take any questions that we have here for Jeremy. And Jeremy, first question comes in and says, if there was one thing that you felt like was the most important part of your development as an entrepreneur, there was one thing, maybe it was a book, maybe it was a course, what would you say was the one thing that you've done that's helped you grow as an entrepreneur?
I think that there's a lot, and it mostly came through making the wrong decisions on a lot of things. But I think I'm going to give you a couple, but I would say one is what we've been talking about, really focusing on what's coming in, right? Like what content, what does your extra time look like? Looking at things holistically, 360 degrees. I don't want to be the guy who's great at work, but everything else falls apart. I want to tie in my world and the things that I dedicate my time and energy to into one dream that I'm able to live and inspire others with. So that's one thing. Really look at how you're refining yourself and what you're doing. And then secondly is don't be afraid. The grind and the hustle, you have to have grit. You have to have grit. There's a difference between grit and working yourself on a rat race wheel for no reason. And us as entrepreneurs, we feel like it's our duty to be on a rat race reel sometimes. And I went in one time to pay our rent at this building at the oceanfront. And I went to this guy who I admired. He's a local guy. He owns all these properties. He surfs, he fishes, he's doing all these cool stuff with his life. And I said, "Hey, what's up, man?" He goes, "Nobody wins the rat race, Jeremy. Nobody." And I looked at him and I was thinking, like, why would he say that? What in the world is he talking about? And then I realized, like, I am grinding and grinding and grinding when I could be taking a leap of faith. Nobody else can do this but me. That's what I always thought. But it's not the case, right? So if you take in the right content, you take in the right friendships, you're focusing on developing yourself in a 360 manner, you will be able to identify what your strengths and weaknesses are and where it's time to not do that, right? And Brian, you told me this one, and I don't know what book this is from, but it's their 90 is better than my 10. Like 90% of them, it started with my operations guy on finance and everything else. Things that I hated to do, he took it to another level. Then it was something else, and then it was something else, and now it's creative, my passion. I have a global creative director that used to be the Under Armour global creative director. He's way better than me. I'm just telling you, your passions evolve as you're able to hone in on these things. Your dreams evolve, but don't be afraid to take someone on, and don't be so conceited that you think that you're the only person who can do it. And that was my problem. And it's still my problem for a lot of things. But I have to constantly remind myself. So it's two things, but it is very important because us as entrepreneurs, we want to hard charge everything. Give me the ball, I'm going to run, and you'll stomp all over everybody, and you'll oftentimes run yourself into the ground.
And as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, your time is your most valuable asset, right? So if there's something that you can hire someone else to do and they can do it 80% as well as you can, hire it out so you
Yeah,
can
and if
focus
you
only on
think,
what you can do.
yeah, and you think that capital is your biggest asset when it comes to these things. Well, your time earns more capital. Like, start like now I outsource the person who picks up my dog poop, right? Because it allows me more time with my kids, like whatever, right? It buys me a couple of minutes. But yeah, I think that we are very protective of capital investments as entrepreneurs. What your core competency is where you're going to earn. And so if you are taking on those things, whether it's bookkeeping or whether it's creative or any of those things, like, you're not serving your team, you're not serving your business, you're not serving your family, you're not serving any of those people like you could be if you weren't able to pass the torch on to someone else, right? And that's the big thing that I would say.
Yeah, and again, anything you can do to free up, it's like I talk about the 3 E's, right? Energy, education, entertainment. Where's your time going? The time that you have, the limited time, the 3 E's. How much time goes into your energy building? How much time goes into your entertainment? Watching Netflix, watching TV, watching some of the great content that Jeremy produces. And how much of your time is going into energy building, energy, entertainment, education? Are you becoming a better version of you? Question comes in, Jeremy, from Alex. He says, regarding the 5 people that you text, the last 5 people you text, how do you balance the people who need you for leadership with the people who you are reaching out to for guidance and mentorship? Great question, Alex.
Yeah, that's great, man. I'm auditing those as well, right? Like, am I giving? And ideally, it's immeasurable, right? The fruits of your giving, and your giving to others, because it's happening when they see you. When you do something like this, ideally, I'm impacting, folks on this. So, you know, it's very easy when you first get in the practice of self-development, high performance, any of the optimizations, any of these things, that it can be very self-focused, and it's what can I gain, right?
Hmm.
And there is those balances that you'll have to thread the needle in figuring that out. And like I said, with my balance on my faith, I looked at it, when I looked back, like 2 quarters of my MVPs was like, I wasn't even focusing on that. What am I doing, right? And you have to have proper, you know, um, you have to have proper mentorship. You have to have proper leadership, that people are willing to give you. It's not just you auditing yourself. It's also people that you respect and people that you admire, and trust auditing yourself too. So there is some self-correction there, right? But I will say, we're not ready to mentor or give or lead until we are already there, right? And so it's very easy for us to fall back on making self excuses. For me, it's making excuses on why I should do this and instead of somebody else. But it's a balancing act, and everyone's called for different things, and there's different seasons in life. I think that you ideally get to a portion of life where you can make a bigger impact on an hour being on one of these, or what Brian's doing on a weekly basis, then a lot of things could happen in one phone call. Now, that doesn't say that you turn your back on people who need you. It's a fine line. And everyone's a little different, but I would audit those things that are important to you just like you would say, hey, what are the last 5 people? I would tie in, if one of them's got to be someone that you admire, then one of them needs to be, and just counterbalance yourself until you get a groove for what you believe is right. And so one, it has to be someone you're sowing into, and one of them has to be someone that, you want to compliment or gain a relationship with. But I would add in whatever's priority into that auditing process.
It's awesome. Jeremy, question comes in. It talked about optimize and said some of the optimized books that you've gone through or books that you're reading currently to help develop an entrepreneur or an elite mindset.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of endless on that. I mean, they're so crazy. I love self-reliance. and I like how to win friends and influence people. I mean, I think that's whether you're a salesman or whether you're just a dad, how to win friends and influence people is important, because you need to you need to win your kids and influence them too. And so there's so many principles out of that book that I really like. And then self-reliance, I like a lot as well.
Awesome. Just got a couple minutes left here for tonight's Coaching Matters group coaching program. Our guest is Jeremy Carey. He's the CEO of the Ironclad Content Network, media group out of Virginia Beach, Virginia. And once again, we'd like to recognize Fundraising University owner Mike Bahoon as the official sponsor for the Coaching Matters group coaching program. And Fundraising University is looking for team members to join us and join our mission in helping to dream big and raise more. So if you're interested, go ahead and click on the link inside here of our chat in Zoom, and we can get more questions, or you can get more information about joining the team and joining our mission here. Jeremy, next question comes in and it says, you've talked a lot about your personal MVP process. Do you use an MVP process with your organization at Ironclad?
I do. We have, and especially comes down to our mission and values. It's on all of our presentations. It's on everything we do internally. Our mission and values are very important to us. And they're things that we, as an organization did not have. And then when we started implementing it, allows, as we expand, quick onboarding, quickly get on the same page. And then if there ever is internal debate or internal strife, does it align with these? If it does, we know we can move forward. If it doesn't, we exit.
It's funny you mentioned that when there's a conflict or there's a decision that needs to be made, does it align with the values, right? And I think for Fundraising University, the values are the acronym CEO Street, right? Are you competitive? Are you empathetic? Are you organized? Are you a self-starter? Are you a teacher? So we use the acronym CEO Street: competitive, empathetic, organized, self-starter, and teachable. For me personally, my personal core principles would be the acronym APPLE: accountability, present, process-driven, loving, and energy. And I've had some difficult decisions to make in terms of what I will and won't do business-wise and with my time and other things. Especially in the last 13 weeks now that I'm a father. And it's interesting. One of the questions that a coach of mine always comes back to, and he says, "Well, Brian, how does this align with your core principles and your MVP? How does this align with what your big picture goal is of what you really want for your life?" And just by asking that question, and you can ask that question to yourself, how does this align with what I really want for my life? How does this align with my core principles? How does this align with who I want to be? But if you never ask the question, what do I really want for my life? What are my core principles? And who do I want to be? You can't get to those answers. So there's been a lot of content that's come out on this call here tonight. And I want to ask the people who have been with us here to go into the chat. And if you would, what's the number one thing that you took off of tonight's call? And I'm going to ask Jackson Mitchell if you're with us. Jackson, I don't know if you can unmute yourself and join us here. I'm going to ask you to unmute. But, Jackson's a young entrepreneur. He played football at SMU. Jackson, what's the biggest thing you took away tonight from Jeremy?
I think my favorite thing is just the MVP process. I'm going through the 30-day athlete guide and covered that recently. And as I thought back to, our days at SMU, going over the content that we went with you when I was playing, I remember back to talking about that. And as I've started to jot down notes around my business idea, one of the biggest things that I put down on paper was, what are my core principles? So then for me to then see that in the 30-day athlete guide and then hear Jeremy talk about it on the call as well, it's just, further reinforcement of the importance of having those core principles that you can fall back on all the time. So yeah, I love that.
It's awesome. And Jackson, let me put you on the spot here. Do you remember the core principles? What year did you graduate SMU football?
2017.
2017, so about 5 years ago. Do you remember the core principles of SMU football?
I do, yeah. We had accountability, energy and work ethic, mental and physical toughness, family, integrity, and a confidence, belief, and faith.
6 years ago, you played college football, and you still remember that. How do you remember that?
It's ingrained. It all goes back to the process. And that was something that, if you chose to buy into it, you lived it every day. So, as I've thought about this specific thing, mental performance mastery, it's like there were certainly teammates in the room who were like, oh, this is not it. Like, this guy's off his rocker. He's crazy, dominate the day. But if you chose to buy into it, it's impactful stuff. So that's why I still remember it.
Yeah. How about that? When's the last time that you had to rattle off the core principles of SMU football?
No one's asked me to do that probably since I graduated.
Yeah. And it came to you like your birthday.
Easy
and
money.
I think easy, right? And it's crazy that I ran into a couple of your former teammates at the Waste Management Open Golf Tournament up here in Phoenix in February. And I did the same thing. I said, hey, tell me the core principles of SMU football. It's been 5 years. And they literally could go through and do the same thing. And I think that, to me, for all the coaches on this call, for all the Fundraising U reps on this call, Jackson didn't know I was going to put him on the spot. He didn't know I was going to ask him about the MVP process of SMU football. And here he is 6 years later, and he still knows it. Imagine if you started today making an MVP process for yourself, for your family, for your business. Imagine if you started today adding more value, giving more value to the teams that you work with by helping those coaches create an MVP process for their program. If that was one thing that you undertook as a Fundraising University rep with your coaches, or as a coach with your program, other coaches in your school, imagine the impact and the influence that could be made. Here's an athlete 6 years later and still knows it. So, Jeremy, man, thank you for coming on tonight and talking about the MVP process. I thought that was really, really cool. Last question I'll ask for you. If you could remove the skull cap of everybody who's on this call live and the thousands of people that will download and listen to it in podcast form or watch it on YouTube, if you could remove the skull cap of everyone who listens to this call and plant one seed about the entrepreneurial mindset to help grow their business, to accelerate their business growth, what would that one seed be?
It's a big one, but you can do and be anybody that you want to be, do anything that you want to do. You have to put in the process to get there. You have to write it down and pursue it. Your dreams will evolve. It will, as you pursue new challenges and new opportunities, your dreams will evolve. You have no idea how big your vision can become and no idea what you're capable of doing until you start holding yourself accountable and pushing yourself to take those steps. The impact that you can make for your team, for your families, for your children is immeasurable, but you have to put in the effort and measure them yourselves and audit them as you get there to see where you want to go. It's immeasurable what can happen if you put in the work on that.
And Jeremy, man, I love the Ironclad. You guys talk about how iron sharpens iron, and Carolyn, my 13-week-old daughter, has a onesie with the Ironclad logo on it, and it says iron sharpens iron. And every time I put that on her, it just reminds me of the importance of surrounding yourself with people who share the same goals and have the same mission as you do. So I appreciate you sharpening the iron of everybody who's on here tonight. I appreciate you taking time out of your hectic schedule to join us. And I appreciate everybody for being on the call tonight with Jeremy. And remember that coaching matters. And we've got one more call before we move into season 2. Just keep an eye on your inbox. We'll make sure we send out the recording to this call tomorrow, as well as the information for our upcoming call with Greg Owen, high school athletic director, Starkville High School in Mississippi, state championship winning coach. He's going to talk about the importance of practice planning because, as we know, separation is in preparation. So if we want to win more, we got to dream big, we got to raise more, and we got to not count the days, but make the days count. Jeremy, thank you for being here, man. I appreciate you sharpening the iron, brother.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure and honor to know you, Brian.